Let's start this off by saying I believe in the paranormal just like everybody else in my family. My grandma is a Christian and I also go to church, if that matters. Now let's get into the story. Last night I fell asleep really early, like 8 or 8:30, and I woke up at like 12:40. I stay in an old house, so the floors tend to creak a little when somebody walks on them. But when I wake up I decide to text my friend back because he texted me while I was asleep. I stay up till about 1:30 when he goes to bed and I scroll Instagram reels. At 2 I hear creaking floors and I assume it's my grandma walking around, but the footsteps don't come from down the hall where her room is, so I'm like, that's odd, but whatever. Then the floor starts creaking outside my door, and my grandma normally checks on my in the middle of the night, so nothing odd there, except the door doesn't open, the creaking just keeps on going on the other side of the door, like somebody is shifting their weight from one foot to another. So I hop up and lock the door cause I was scared. About 15 minutes later I hear scratching. So I'm like, maybe they brought in the dogs. But then I realize the dogs would have been whining, so I panic and turn on the flashlight under the door to scare it away, then get the bright idea to record the noise, but it stopped scratching before I could, so I only record the weird creaking of the floor. But anyway, my grandma wakes up at like 3 o'clock and casually walks out of her room, and the creaking stops the second I hear her door open. She said she didn't see anything, but I know what I heard and showed her the video, and even she knows it weird. Sightings/encounters. Last week I decided to drive way out into the middle of nowhere, Iowa, to try and see the northern lights. Sadly no luck on the northern lights, but as I was driving home I was on the phone with my husband when suddenly the biggest frickin' bird I have ever seen flew right in front of my car. Looks like it took off from the side of the road. I had to slam on my brakes and got a pretty good look at it for a moment. I grew up in a very nature-oriented family and spent lots of time bird watching with my dad. I know what birds of prey look like and what the size of an eagle is. What I saw was absolutely a bird of prey, and so much bigger than any bird I have ever seen in my life. It looked like it was roughly the size of my car, a small SUV, and all black. I spent the last week trying to find any pictures or information that even came close to what I saw, but the only thing I found were pictures of thunderbirds, which apparently are only legend. Anyone ever see a bird like this? What is the likelihood that the thunderbird does exist, and in Iowa at that? So many questions on almost every conceivable subject matter, so much misinformation being dumped on us since childhood, and so little time to sort it all out to get to bottom of what's really turning the wheels. What or who's behind orchestrating an endless onslaught of big misdirect ions onto humanity? I'm so exhausted and extremely frustrated that I have no easy access to the absolute truth on all things. You name any conspiracy out there and we still don't know with absolute certainty what really went down. We all have our hunches and most likely scenarios to play from, but it leads nowhere. One of the biggest stories that frustrates me to no end is the question of extraterrestrials and UFOs. Are they even worth wasting our energy on? Is the alien phenomenon just one big stupid made-up story to misdirect us? It's so difficult to sift through the nonsense and make sense of what's really going on. I think one of the biggest conspiracies is creating mass confusion and despair from lacking the truth on basically everything. Not sure if most of us normal folks will ever get to the bottom of what this world is really about, who's behind it and why. I am certain though there are some behind the scenes with great power and influence that do have that kind of knowledge. The kind of knowledge that can change the world forever, but their lips must be so sealed shut and protected that it will take a miracle to get that information out into the light for all to see. What will it take to get that information that changes the world forever? Late last night I got up to get a bowl of cereal before going to bed. While I was pouring my cereal I caught a glimpse of something white in the corner of my eye in my living room. I looked over and for just a split second I saw myself walking and he looked right at me, then vanished so quickly. He was wearing a white t-shirt while I was currently shirtless. No possibility of a reflection since it was just my couch and wall right there. No mirrors, or windows. Anybody else ever experienced something similar to this? What could have happened? I'm not a superstitious person. I didn't believe in ghosts or demons until now. Yeah, stuff happens that can't be explained. But I just want you all to know that it took more than a couple of flying spoons or a door opening on its own to scare me out of my job. Since the department didn't find any reason to keep this police report confidential, I will now detail you everything I can on what happened on the scariest night of my life. We had just received word from dispatch to check out a noise complaint in a small neighborhood whose name I will not disclose for their privacy. It was me and my partner. Let's call him Paul and I'll go by Mike. We arrive sometime after midnight. The street is dead. Everyone is sound asleep at this point. We park our patrol car in front of the aforementioned house and exit the vehicle. We knock on the door and let our presence known. Police. Is anyone home? A little girl, 8 to 10 in appearance, opens the door and peeks through the gap. Hey, I crouch to make myself less intimidating. Is your parent or guardian home? She shakes her head. My first thought was that she probably had the TV a little too high and woke up the neighbors. But before I could tell her to stay inside and lock the doors then part, I heard the sound of crashing silverware coming from what I presumed would be the kitchen. The entire house was nearly pitch black. The girl answering the door and shaking her head let me know she was alone. Which makes whoever made that noise an intruder as far as it concerns me. I asked the girl to step outside and turn to Paul. Paul, why don't you give her one of those lollipops you like to suck on when you're nervous? Paul gave me a cold stare as the girl giggled. They went to go wait by the car as I slowly pushed the door all the way open. Police. If there is anyone in this house, please let yourself be known. Without a warrant, I had no right to enter the building. I tried my best to spot whoever made the noise, but it is too dark to see. Just any sign of a threat and I would be justified to search the house. But nothing. I left the door open and headed back towards Paul and the girl. Hey again. I don't think we introduced ourselves. I'm Officer Mike. This is my partner Paul. If I may ask, what is your name? Maribel. That's a pretty name. So Maribel. Again, if I may ask. Where is your family? As soon as I had finished my sentence, the television in the living room turned on, volume fully up. Me and Paul quickly turned in surprise and could see the television playing static from outside. We put Maribel in the back seat of the patrol car for her safety as no civilians were allowed in the front seats. We then, against our better judgment, enter the house. We tried every switch in the house but no lights came on. While wandering the house cautiously, I would catch a person standing in the mirrors. I thought it was Paul, but every time I looked behind me, Paul was nowhere to be found. As I returned to the front door along with Paul, we both jumped as running footsteps echoed down the hall. We detached our firearms and aimed it at the source. The footsteps got louder and got closer. But no one ever appeared physically. Lamps, chairs, and other stuff started getting thrown around by an invisible force as the footsteps reached us. We sprinted out of the house and waited by the front yard. The footsteps seemed to stop, followed by the police siren that went off. I ran to the car and silenced the siren. I looked back at Paul, who seemed shocked. You all right, Paul? He takes a lollipop out of its package and puts it in his mouth. Yep. I opened the rear door and checked up on Maribel. You okay? She nodded her head, so I walked back to Paul. I don't know what to make of this, he said. Yeah, me neither. No. Seriously. Ignore the running invisible man that knocked everything down for a second. All the family photos, pictures on the wall, he points at Maribel, she's not in any of them. So what are you thinking? The footsteps led outside. Then the siren goes off. There's a million buttons in that car. What are the chances? Paul. Are you trying to tell me that Maribel is haunted? How do you explain what we just saw? I'm sure there's an explanation. The TV turns on when we take Maribel outside, prompting us to check it out. Someone or something shows up in the mirrors but ducks away. I remember wanting to shut him up. Not because he wasn't making any sense, but because he was. I know you seen it. It was prowling around. Then it runs outside and gets in the car. Tries all the buttons. I think a ghost is trying to get to the girl. I just stood there, not sure what to say, until Paul decided to start walking back towards the house. Paul, what are you doing? It only shows up in the mirrors. That's how we find it? I followed him inside and watched as he takes a book from the counter and breaks the nearest mirror. What's the matter with you? That's someone's property. He takes a shard and hands another to me. It's not every day you get to arrest a ghost. We aimed our flashlights all over the house waiting for something to appear in the broken glass. I recall praying to God Almighty to not let anything show up, but it did. I panicked as it swung its red bony arm at my back. It ripped right through my uniform, causing me to fall forward. I dropped the glass, which broke into smaller chunks. It continued clawing at my shirt and flesh but stopped when Paul opened fire. I heard its screech fading as Paul helped me up. We both then hurried back outside to find Maribel missing from the back seat. It was difficult explaining what happened to the department without sounding like nut jobs. The police cameras who we were betting on to prove our stories had shut off the moment we entered the house. The thing, whatever it was, must have turned them off while we were unaware. The only part of our story that our police captain took seriously was the girl, Maribel. The captain brought up a missing person report and asked us if this was the girl we saw. It was. It's been just a few days since I gave up the badge to save whatever little pride I could spare. I just ask to whoever reads this and to whomever it may reach. The next time a door opens on its own or things move by themselves in your home,
like, share, subscribe and be sure to check the notification bell. Follow the Atomic Shaman on Twitter at Motel and RV Park. Listen to Paranormal Green Text Stories on Atomic Shaman TTS on YouTube. Catch the live streams of Atomic Shaman Sweat Lodge only on Rumble.